appreciate you joining us. If you want to ask us a question tonight, please press *3 and a member of our staff will assist you. Now, I'll turn it over to Senator Gardner for some opening remarks while waiting for more people to join the call.
Thank you all for participating in tonight's telephone town hall. I'm Senator Cory Gardner. It's a great honor to represent you in the United States Senate. This is a live telephone town hall where we'll be able to have a great conversation about issues of concern to everyone across the state. I'll open with a few remarks while we're waiting for people to join the call. If you'd like to ask a question, as Megan said, please press *3 on your keypad. And at the beginning of this live call, as more people are joining and dialing in, we're going to talk just about a few of the things that we've been working on as we wait for people to be able to get into queue for the questions. This is a series of telephone town halls that we're hosting, and we're reaching out with people across the state of Colorado, from the Eastern Plains, the Western Slope, and up and down the Front Range. Obviously, the voices that are on the phone tonight are absolutely our greatest resource when it comes to the work being done in the United States Senate. These town hall opportunities provide an opportunity to update constituents while working in session in the Senate, and to answer as many questions as I can while we're on the phone tonight. Nothing's more important to me than listening to your concerns and hearing your opinions. This past year, I had the opportunity to visit all of the 64 counties in Colorado. I've held more than a dozen rural economic roundtables, met with as many constituents as possible from different backgrounds and industries, including healthcare providers, educators, farmers, and entrepreneurs, to gain a better understanding of how I could help in the United States Senate. Again, this is U.S. Senator Cory Gardner, a live telephone town hall. If you'd like to press *3 to ask a question, go ahead and do so. We're going to wait for a little bit while we get more people into the call before we start taking questions. Over the past several weeks, I've been traveling across the Front Range and the Eastern Plains, meeting with constituents, including members of Healthcare Association, Colorado Space Coalition, the Fort Collins Chamber of Commerce, opportunities to visit at the Governor's Ag Forum, and just this past weekend in southern Colorado. If you have a question, need assistance, or want to voice a concern, I hope that you will contact our offices, my offices. We have locations in Grand Junction, Denver, Pueblo, Greeley, Yuma, Colorado Springs, Fort Collins, Durango, and Washington. And I encourage you to check out our website at gardner.senate.gov to find contact information. Links to our social media pages on that page as well, and learn more about how our office can assist you, whether it's helping with the Social Security Administration or IRS issue or VA benefits. Again, this is U.S. Senator Cory Gardner. Please press *3 if you have a question. And we're going to go ahead and go to one of our internet questions.
So as many of you may know, you can also submit questions through our website. So we are going to start tonight's telephone town hall with one of those questions. Again, if you do have a question, please press *3 and a member of our staff will assist you. The first question comes from Warren Van. Do you no longer support repeal of Obamacare? If so, what took you so long? I've been trying to reach you on this issue for years.
Thank you very much for the question, Warren, submitted online. I absolutely support the repeal of Obamacare and its replacement with something that's going to work. It's very important that we have a system in place that is better than the Affordable Care Act. If you see what's happened in Colorado, 500,000 plus people who had their insurance plans canceled, people who lost their doctor, people who lost their insurance policies because they were canceled under the Affordable Care Act, and people who could no longer afford to go to the doctor because their deductibles were so high under the Affordable Care Act. In fact, it doesn't matter if it was a Republican president elected or a Democrat president elected in November, a Republican majority in the Senate or a Democrat majority in the Senate. We would be here today discussing a replacement of the Affordable Care Act because, as Bill Clinton said during the campaign, the Affordable Care Act is the craziest thing. And so we see a lot of unintended consequences that have impacted people across Colorado in a negative way. Obviously, there are people who have benefited, and that's something that we have to take very seriously, something that we have to get right. That's why this is a very important conversation to have tonight on how we can make sure that the replacement plan works better than the Affordable Care Act. My family, as I spoke to this issue last week in a teletown hall, my family over the past several months, past 2 months, my father has been in and out of the hospital. My mother survived breast cancer over the past couple of years, and our daughter has been diagnosed over the past year when she turned 1 year old with a macrocystic vascular encephalopathy. And so I understand the needs that we have to address when it comes to healthcare by driving down the cost of care, increasing the quality of care. And I believe we can come up with a plan, Democrats and Republicans working together to put in place reforms that will allow a competitive marketplace when it comes to insurance, to reduce the burden on employers, making it more likely that they will offer coverage and allow individuals who wish to seek their own insurance better options to choose for themselves what works for them. I've joined several of my colleagues in expressing desires and concerns to the majority leader that we make sure the Medicaid transition, if that's what happens, is done properly, giving the states the full flexibility they need to make smart decisions, to drive down the cost of care, increasing the quality of care, making sure that we continue to provide the opportunities for people to have a better system than the Affordable Care Act. So a number of things that we can get into tonight if you'd like, but we've got to make sure that we have something better than what we have today, and that's the goal. I hope that's the goal of every Republican and Democrat in the United States Congress. Warren, thank you very much. Again, this is United States Senator Cory Gardner. Press *3 if you have a question, a live telephone town hall to constituents across the state of Colorado. We'll be taking phone calls, web questions. If you'd like to visit our website at gardner.senate.gov to find out more information, contact information, please do so. There are people who are still joining the call, so I'll be reminding people pressing *3 for questions throughout the evening. Megan, we'll go to the next question.
The next question comes from Ron in Steamboat Springs. Ron, you're on live.
Hello, Senator. I sure appreciate the opportunity to speak with you directly and ask you a question. In your last town hall meeting, you listed the Biden rule as the reason that confirmation hearings were not held on former President Obama's nomination of Judge Garland Merrick to the Supreme Court. With all due respect, as you know, there is no Biden rule, and to suggest otherwise is misleading. I've done some research on this, and then Senator Biden suggested at the time that confirmation hearings for a new Supreme Court justice, if needed, should wait until after the campaign season in fairness to the nominee. However, Senate Republicans continue to cite the Biden rule as if it was true to hold the nomination of a well-respected moderate judge hostage for political reasons, yielding to extremists in your party. Now we have another well-respected judge nominated. And this nomination and confirmation is expected to be highly partisan. And who is responsible? My question to you is, will you go on the record on whether you'll vote for the nuclear option, essentially the ending of the Senate tradition of the filibuster, if needed to get Judge Gorsuch confirmed, or will you promote some compromise? And if so, what might that look like to get us out of this partisan mess that we're in?
Well, thank you, Ron, very much. As you know, Senator Biden did say that we should delay the confirmation of a justice. I think you just either quoted the vice president when he was in the Senate, or at least made a synopsis of what he said. Senator Schumer said basically the same thing. In fact, in the last several years of the administration, that he would prefer not to have a justice confirmed under the last several years of President Bush. But I also believe that I spoke of something else, and that was the fact that if the confirmation process took roughly the same time as it usually does, or perhaps a little bit longer, which it most likely would have, then the new justice, whoever it was, would be seated just a few weeks before the next president of the United States was chosen by the American people. And I felt that if you're going to choose a new Supreme Court justice, one that would significantly impact the majority of the Supreme Court, just a few weeks before the presidential election, the choice of the American people were making for who would be in the White House, I felt that the American people should ultimately decide who that justice was going to be, and that's why I believe that the next president should have been the one to make that decision. Whether that was Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, or Donald Trump, or Jeb Bush at the time, we didn't know. But I do think it's important that we have a justice that can receive support from both sides of the aisle, and I believe Judge Gorsuch, will receive Democrat and Republican support. Unfortunately, the Senate had its rules changed by Senator Harry Reid for all nominations. That was a choice that Senator Reid invoked using the nuclear option a couple of years ago, and now that applied to every nomination except for the U.S. Supreme Court justice. I believe that Justice Gorsuch won't even face the question of a filibuster because he will receive that unanimous support, and that's not a question that we will have to address at this time because I believe he will be confirmed with bipartisan support. So thank you very much, Ron, for the question. This is United States Senator Cory Gardner. Press *3 if you have a question, and Megan will go to the next call.
The next call comes from Max in Longmont. Max, you're on live at the center.
Hi, Senator. Thanks for taking my question. Hey, last weekend the president tweeted out some stuff that just seems straight up insane. I think my chief concern right now is his mental stability, since his finger is on the nuclear trigger. Do you think this guy's nuts? Everything in the news kind of makes it look like he is. What do you think?
Well, thank you very much, Max, for the question. One of the genius features of our government, of course, by our founders over 200 years ago, was the fact that we have three separate but equal branches of government: a judiciary, a legislative branch, and an executive branch. And if the executive branch pursues a course of action that is not favored by the legislative branch, and the legislative branch has the ability to enact rules, laws, and override vetoes to make sure that they are taking actions necessary to counteract the decisions of the president if indeed the legislative branch disagrees with those actions. But again, I think there's a lot of people who supported President Trump during the election. There's a lot of people who opposed President Trump during the election, just as President Obama faced the same kind of split in 2008. So the genius of our government is that we have a separation of powers, and it's our obligation to make sure that we maintain that strong, separate but equal form of our government, the three separate branches. So I again, will leave any medical diagnosis to the experts, but we're empowered in the United States Senate to do what we believe is right from a legislative perspective. Thank you very much for the question, Max in Longmont. And Megan will go to the next question.
The next question comes from Paula in Ridgewood. Paula, you're on live at the center.
Thank you. I had a number of concerns I wanted to ask you about. One is the Affordable Care Act, and I know Republicans are decrying all the problems with it, but we seem to be forgetting what the situation was before we had the Affordable Care Act, when competition was simply helping insurance companies boot up the rates to impossible levels. And I'm concerned the Republicans will now push through a replacement that again increases competition and reduces the coverage. The ACA did at least manage to give a lot insurance to several hundred million people that didn't have it before. And I'm afraid those people are going to lose it with the version we have now, and then it'll be passed without triple consideration. So I do want to make sure that we don't pass legislation which is going to deprive those Americans of the coverage they now have. I'm also concerned in that act about the provisions to defund Planned Parenthood. Roe versus Wade gave women the right to a legal abortion decades ago, and the Republicans have been trying to take that away from us in every way they can. But to defund Planned Parenthood, right now, federal money is not supporting Planned Parenthood. It's not supporting abortions. It supports other aspects of Planned Parenthood. And this bill would defund Planned Parenthood, deprive them of any federal funds at all, and many women would lose their care. I know Trump is saying, all they have to do is quit doing abortions, but that's not right. We have the right to legal abortion, so it's not a proper response. As regarding the Russian connections with this administration, we need an independent special prosecutor. The deputy of Sessions is clearly not independent enough to do this. We need someone that the American people can trust, that is not controlled by the Republican administration, to find out what Trump's connections are. And of course, revealing his tax returns would be helpful in that regard as well. A couple of more issues. One is the new Muslim ban on travel that is still morally repugnant, and it's also nonsense. The government's own studies show that terrorists in this country are radicalized after they enter the U.S., not before. So this order is simply bigotry, and it's probably unconstitutional. I'm a retired attorney. The Republicans are also talking about the government debt, and this I'm concerned about, that Trump is simply going to increase it, and he's going to pay for the wall and these huge military expenditures by cutting our safety net even further. So if we want to get rid of the national debt, what we need to do is watch absurd expenses like this wall we don't need, and these military expenditures he's espousing, and instead go back to a progressive tax rate so that the Republicans keep giving the wealthy more and more tax breaks. If you quit doing that and insisted they pay their fair share, we wouldn't have a national debt. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. I'll try to address these questions in the order that you brought them up. I absolutely agree with you. We have to have careful consideration of any replacement of the Affordable Care Act, and I agree that what was in place before the Affordable Care Act wasn't working either. It led to higher costs. I come from a family business background, and we watched as our healthcare costs increased dramatically over a course of several years, and the amount of money that was increased in cost could have been used to hire new people, to expand the business, to invest in new equipment that would have allowed us to grow and hire more people. And so what was in place before the Affordable Care Act wasn't working. When the Affordable Care Act passed, it was promised that it would, if you liked your health care plan, you could keep your health care plan. That turned out not to be true. It was promised that if you liked your doctor, you could keep your doctor. That turned out not to be true. It was promised that the average family would see a reduction in their cost of insurance by over $2,000. That turned out not to be true, as we've seen double-digit increases in insurance costs over the past several years. Seen over 500,000 people in Colorado have their health insurance plans canceled. We've seen 80,000, I think it was 80,000 people lose their insurance when the health co-op collapsed, and it left the taxpayers out to dry with hundreds of millions of dollars across the country when other health co-ops failed. And so we have to have something in place that works better than the Affordable Care Act. You mentioned that a lot of people have coverage. Well, coverage is different than being able to use that coverage and actually going in to see the doctor. One of the challenges that the Affordable Care Act presented was, in fact, I spoke to an individual the other day in Colorado who was paying $300 to $400 a month in insurance prior to the Affordable Care Act. Once it passed, this person's insurance went to around $1,300 a month in insurance premiums with an extremely high deductible. So they basically had an additional home mortgage added to the cost of their insurance every month, and they no longer can use their insurance. So sure, they have coverage, but they can't actually use it. And that's what we've got to fix, and that's what we've got to solve, and it's something that the Affordable Care Act did not address. And so you're right, though. I sent a letter, joined a group of senators expressing concern that a February 10th draft of the House version of a replacement of Affordable Care Act didn't do enough to make sure that we had a transition period in place that was strong enough for the states, and one that made sure we get it right. So continue to engage on this discussion to make sure that we get it right for the American people. When it comes to Planned Parenthood, I think the plan is to take funds that were going, federal funds that were going to Planned Parenthood, and I believe Planned Parenthood has said that it can more than survive without federal funding, that would distribute those funds that are going to Planned Parenthood. I believe the House plan would then give it to federally qualified health centers. There are far more federally qualified health centers in Colorado than there are Planned Parenthood centers. These are community-based outpatient facilities that provide health services to medically underserved populations, also include things like mental health, dental, medical, primary care services that even more people would have access to across the state of Colorado. As far as the Russian involvement, I believe very much, and I've said it publicly, that I think Russia tried to influence the election. They were trying to hack and put out fake news and do all kinds of subversive tactics that tried to influence the election and undermine the integrity of our electoral process. That's what they tried to do. That's why I've supported the Intel investigation by Senators Wyden and Senators Burr. Senator Warner, excuse me, is the ranking member of the Intel committee. I have also supported the creation of a standalone cyber committee, a select committee on cyber, that would investigate the Russian hack along with other cyber issues. I think it's very important that we do that. We have to have an ability to break down the stovepipe of cybersecurity that's hurting our policy as it relates to cybersecurity right now. I think the other question you had was the issue of the executive order on vetting. We need to have a vetting system in place for countries that wish to come into the United States, particularly those countries that are either facing a significant crisis at home, or to make sure that the people who are coming into this country pose no harm to this country. So I opposed the initial executive order because it was overreaching and broad. and affected those who had a legal right to be here, and that was unacceptable. And I'll continue to speak out when these types of issuances occur. As far as the wall goes, I believe we have to have border security, but I do think billions of dollars on a wall is not the right way to proceed. I don't support a tariff to pay for any kind of a wall. If we need security on the border, whether that's personnel or whether we do need security on the border, but that may mean personnel, it may mean a fence, it may mean an electronic fence, but we shouldn't just build a wall at billions of dollars because that's what somebody said should be done. So that's important that we get this right. As far as tax reform goes, I believe lowering taxes is actually going to spur economic growth, and economic growth is one of the only ways we're going to find ourselves out of this $20 trillion debt that we have right now. Lowering taxes on businesses, we have one of the highest, if not the highest, corporate tax rate in the developed industrialized world that's driving our businesses overseas. If we lower the rate, spur more investment here, then we're going to have the opportunity to create jobs and economic growth here, which will end up in more taxes being paid to the federal government, helping drive down our debt and deficit. Unfortunately, over the last 8 years, we had more debt added to our country than any president between, the presidents from George Washington to George Bush combined. And that's hurting our ability to be competitive globally and certainly a burden on our children and grandchildren. So I hope all is well in southwestern Colorado. It's great to hear from you. And again, this is United States Senator Cory Gardner. This is a live telephone town hall across the state of Colorado. If you have a question, please press *3. *3 if you have a question. You can also go to my website at gardner.senate.gov to find contact information or stop by one of my offices across the state. We'll go to the next question.
The next question comes from Mary in Denver. Mary, you're on live with the center.
Good evening, Senator. Thank you very much for accepting my call. Myself and several of my friends are confused about how marijuana law in Colorado operates. It appears to be in conflict with federal law that bans the use of marijuana, particularly for recreational purposes. So could you help clear up our confusion by explaining why Colorado has a law that says the use of marijuana for recreational purposes is legal. The federal law, as I understand it, says it's illegal. And to make some sort of an analogy, we think in terms of, we have a federal law against discrimination, say in housing. Does it follow then that if Colorado decided to discriminate in housing, that would be okay, even though there's a federal law against it? Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mary, very much for the question. This is a very challenging issue of federalism, states' rights versus federal law, a question of even perhaps the 9th and 10th Amendments of the Constitution. One of the questions that this reminds me of is a question back when I believe Colorado passed the recreational marijuana law. At the same time Colorado passed the recreational marijuana law, I believe the state of Oklahoma passed a law to opt the state out of the Affordable Care Act. At which point the Attorney General's decision, or at least the federal government's decision, was that the Affordable Care Act was federal law, and therefore Oklahoma could not opt out of federal law. But when it came to the issue of recreational marijuana, they said they were going to use prosecutorial discretion and some other legal theories to not enforce federal law against the state of Colorado, culminating in a legal document known as the Cole Memorandum. That's the C-O-L-E Memorandum. There have been several pieces of legislation to try to correct what appears to be a conflict of law, marijuana being a Schedule I listed drug in conflict with federal law. To fix that, I support states' rights, and this is something where I have said that Colorado is deep in the heart of the laboratory when it comes to the issue of states' rights. Our founders intended states to be laboratories of democracy, and that's exactly where Colorado is. So I think this is something that we're trying to, Congress is a question before it to resolve. I've introduced legislation, co-sponsored legislation, to address the banking issue and other components of CBD oils and the medical side of marijuana, the cannabinoid oil situation. So it's something that Congress does need to resolve. I think that's an important issue, Mary. Thank you very much for bringing it up again, and one more reason why Congress needs to get to work on this issue. Would love to hear from you. Please press *3 if you have a question. This is United States Senator Cory Gardner, and we'll go to the next question.
The next question comes from Christopher in Breckenridge. Christopher, are you there? Okay, we may have lost Christopher. The next question comes from Rebecca in Aspen.
Hi, I'm here.
Great, you're on live.
Thank you. Senator Gardner, thank you so much for doing these town halls. I was present for the one, I don't know if it was earlier in the week or last week that you did, so I really appreciate it. I'm in rapt attention to everything you're saying. So I'm going to bring up the subject of the Russians again, but I'm not talking about the Russian influence on the election. I'm talking about the Russian influence that is now inside of our government. So I don't know whether or not your staff has given you a lot of the research that I have sent you, just to make sure. Kai, hang that up right now. Just to make sure that you are aware of this. And any one thing, we could pass this off, but there is so many coincidences, I'll call them, that are going on in the government right now. You know, Wilbur Ross, who was elected for the Department of Commerce, he was the largest shareholder in the Bank of Cyprus that was convicted by our government just a couple of months ago of running huge amounts of Russian money laundering. And then we have Tillerson, our Secretary of State, who got the 2013 Putin Order of Friendship for running their oil industry for years out of the Bahamas. And then we have Trump, who made $60 million in just a couple of months flipping a piece of real estate down next to his Mar-a-Lago by selling it to a Russian for $100 million. You know, this is how you scrub or launder money, is you do it in things like fake real estate deals. And I've sent you so much evidence on Trump's real estate deals to Russians where he is making a fortune for stuff that is not appraised at that value. So therefore, it's really, really looking fishy what's going on in the government, and I am scared to death. I don't hate the Russians at all, but something is really, really going wrong up there. Are you guys aware of this? What are you doing about it, and why is he allowed to do this when no one's stopping him? I mean, you know about Wilbur Ross in Cyprus, and you know about Tillerson and his deep, deep connections to Russia, and maybe it means nothing, but what if it does? What if it means something really, really serious? And now we've got all the Russians running our government. Please address this.
Well, thank you very much, Rebecca, for the question. And this, obviously, with the Intel investigation that's taking place right now, this is a committee on the U.S. Senate, the Select Committee on Intelligence, a bipartisan committee that is made up of the two leaders of the committee right now being Senator Richard Burr from North Carolina, and Richard Burr is a Republican from North Carolina, and John Warner is a Democrat from Virginia, are leading this investigation and will continue to present the details of the investigation to the United States Senate as they have the opportunity to do so. They have not made a briefing available to members of the Senate who are not on the Intel Committee yet. I anticipate that they will, and I certainly hope that they will, and will be encouraging them to do so. The FBI is still, I believe, has an ongoing investigation into this, and I believe that the FBI should complete its investigation in conjunction with the Intel Committee so that we know exactly what is happening and get to the bottom of this. So, Rebecca, thank you very much for your question. And again, I think when it comes to issues, I know you said this is not about the cyber hack issue, but I believe that the Select Committee on Cyber Security, the cyber issues that I've introduced legislation to create, is an important step in any investigation going forward, and something that we ought to put in place. So, Rebecca, thank you very much for the question, and we'll go to the next question.
Next question comes from Renee in Centennial.
I'm here. Senator Gardner, I'd just like to start out by saying I'm not a paid protester. I'm actually your constituent. And I have a couple of questions. I'm a 35-year-old married mother of two boys who are actively listening to this conversation, and they've really gotten a lesson in civics in the last couple of years. But I also have MS. And as you know, Colorado is one of the leading states of people with MS. And the specific medication that I'm on, research has been done, and it's over the past 3 years has completely stopped the disease. So it's something that I take once every 6 months. It was last year, for the last 2 years, $25,000 a treatment. Thank goodness to my insurance that I was not, thank you to the Affordable Care Act, I wasn't excluded from my insurance because of my pre-existing condition, and they did pick up most of that cost. However, due to the insurance or to the pharmaceutical company, they were able to rename the drug, and the cost January 1 went to $100,000 a treatment, $100,000 every 6 months. I want to know, what are your plans in stopping the special interest money that's coming into Congress from pharmaceutical companies that allow this sort of fleecing of America and our health care? I mean, how can you put a price tag on your health? And I would like to also know, or put in my suggestion that rather than coming up with a whole nother plan, or even trying to fix the Affordable Care Act, what are your thoughts on giving everyone the same health insurance that you and all the members of Congress now currently have? That would seem to me like a better investment than a wall or any other trade deal. Thank you.
Well, Renee, thank you very much for the question, and obviously incredibly powerful to hear your statement of how medication has been able to improve and better your life living with MS. And that's exactly the kind of things that we've got to pursue in the United States Senate. This past year, we passed the 21st Century Cures Act to try to bipartisan bill to make sure that we're making it easier to get life-saving drugs approved through the Food and Drug Administration onto the market and into consumers' hands so that we can have those life-changing, life-saving drugs available to everyone. I mentioned to you that, or I mentioned to the call, that my mother survived breast cancer over the past several years, living as a survivor. And it's because of the advancements that we have made, the incredible care that's available in Colorado. And so it gives me great heart to know, and thank God that you're there with your two boys, I think you said two children, to make sure that they're going to live a great life along with you. And so I'd like to have my staff follow up, if I could, with you. Renee, if we could call you, we'll figure out how to get a hold of you, and your information may be available on the call, or you can send us an email if it's not. I would like to follow up and get to the bottom of the $100,000 per treatment question to see who it is. It seems extremely outrageous, and we should get this figured out. And would like to provide a solution that actually works, because if it's affecting you that way, it's affecting others that way, and we've got to do something about that. So you mentioned the Affordable Care Act working for you, but there are others that it's not. And what we need to do is make sure that this is something that we find a better solution for. We can't go back to what we had before the Affordable Care Act because it wasn't working, but I believe working together, Democrats and Republicans can come up with a solution that will work better. It's my understanding that the House proposal that has been introduced this week maintains the requirement that pre-existing conditions are covered, and it maintains several of the most popular provisions, including people being left on people's insurance to the age of 26, parents' insurance to the age of 26. So the pre-existing conditions insurance requirement remains in place, and we're happy to give you more information on that. Renee, thank you very much, and certainly great to have you on this call. Again, this is U.S. Senator Cory Gardner in a live telephone town hall. If you have a question, please press *3, and we'll go to the next question.
Hello?
Hello, Marilyn.
Hello, Senator. Thank you for taking my call. Yes, I live in Woodland Park, Colorado, and I am not a paid protester, but I'm still calling. I would like you to have a public town hall maybe in April when you come back. It's difficult to get follow-up questions in, but I do have one specifically for you this evening. I have heard you before speak about your support of the Douglas County School Voucher Program, which has been struck down in the courts twice now, and you have voted to confirm the school voucher proponent, Betsy DeVos, for Secretary of the Department of Education. And I was wondering if you are going to continue to support the proposed federal school voucher program for private, religious, and home schools, and if so, what are your justifications for that? And how do you make them accountable, and how do you have them accept all students? Plus, we're a little far. I think Yuma's a little far out for some of the private schools that I would be looking at. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Marilyn, for the question. I do support school choice. I think it's one of the greatest ways to make sure that we're not trapping students in failing schools. Oh, sorry, what's that?
People all over.
What's that? I'm sorry?
I was talking to my husband.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you had a follow-up question. I'm sorry about that. Hey, just wanted to make sure that I support school choice because I believe it's important that we give opportunities to children to go to a school that is better than the one that may be failing that they're in, and that we shouldn't trap students, whether they're in an inner city school or a school anywhere, that is failing them, and that should be the choice that the parents get to make and the student gets to make. I think if you look at many of the schools in Colorado and Denver, Senator Bennett and I have visited Denver public school systems where they have great charter schools and other schools with school choice that are serving every student. And so these are things that I believe we can get right. This is one of the most significant civil rights issues of our time, to make sure that we don't trap people in failing schools. And so when it comes to whether it's a religious school, whether it's a private school, whether it's whatever school you're talking about, that's the choice that the teachers, the parents and the students should make. I don't believe government should be making decisions for people. I think we need to get Congress out of the classroom. I think we need to get Congress out of the way of the local school boards and the state school board and the state legislature, and let parents decide with their child, their student, what's best for them. And so the Douglas County school issue is going on to the United States Supreme Court. I believe it has not finished the court process yet. There's no final determination on that, and we'll see what ends up happening with it. But again, I think school choice is important because there is no one way, and nobody has a monopoly on one way to deliver education, and we should empower people to come up with what's best for that individual child. Thanks, Marilyn, for the question, and we'll go to the next call.
Next call comes from Kelly in Boulder.
Hello, Senator Gardner. Thanks again for holding this teleconference. And it makes me feel that you are really actually willing to hear the concerns of your constituents. And that's actually what my question concerns. And please know that I'm coming from a standpoint of wanting to bridge this hyper-partisan gap that is really affecting our country. Given the overwhelming number of communications that your offices continue to receive, which I understand is just unmanageable, it's clear that Coloradans want to be heard. And I can only imagine how intimidating it might feel to have a continuous barrage of discontented citizens protesting outside your offices. But I have to agree with Marilyn, it's hard to get follow-up questions and to actually have a conversation in this manner. So what I'm asking is, would you be willing to meet on some sort of regular basis with small groups of constituents in a safe environment if they agree to follow basic ground rules of civil discourse?
Well, look, we continue to meet with constituents throughout the state of Colorado. I'm happy to make sure that we find something that works for schedules of people who wish to meet, and whether it's in eastern Colorado, western Colorado, along the Front Range, we'll make sure we get that done. And Kelly, we'll call you and see if we can't get that worked out. I mean, it's important that we do this. We've met with protesters. The office has met with protesters. I've met with people who were protesting and talked to people in the streets as I've gone from meeting to meeting, met with people at open forums that we've held over the past several months that had told me that they were at the office or either protesting the office directly or protesting at an event like the one held the January 21st, the day after the inauguration. We've taken great strides to make sure that we're across all four corners of Colorado. As I mentioned at the beginning of this call, I've traveled just last year to all 64 counties, held dozens of economic roundtables, held multiple open forums, and will continue to do so. So we'll give you a holler and make sure that we can continue meeting and reaching out to constituents across the state. Thank you very much, though, for the call, and appreciate your concern and your opinions, and look forward to hearing from you. With that, Megan will go to the next question.
Next question comes from Marion in Denver.
Hi, this is Marion. Thank you so much for taking my call. My question, given the timeliness of the issue, is again about the ACA. And so I'm a health researcher, and I wanted to raise some concerns about the numbers that you've been citing to support the reason that the ACA needs to be repealed. And the reason that I wanted to raise those concerns was not so much to get into partisan aisle bickering, but to really emphasize the importance of true numbers and not just anecdotes in justifying a reason for wanting to repeal in the first place, and even more importantly, for vetting the replacement bill, including CBO estimates for the impact. I think there are certain numbers that you've quoted, like the 5-fold increase in someone's premium increase, that really don't do justice to what, we have plenty of numbers that show, in 2017, the rise was 20.4% in Colorado, for example. There are numbers like that available, and I think this is so important that we really work on data and not just anecdote. I understand the importance of both because I'm also a pediatrician, and so I hear the stories from my patients who are terrified of what's going to happen next. But I do really think, as a researcher, that integrity to the data is really important. And so, things like, it's not just the direct rise in premiums, but also, the impact that you know so well from traveling the state, that the ACA has led to, at last estimate, I think, was 190,000 more jobs in our state. I know about, kind of the increase just directly in the healthcare industry and in biotech, but, the rural hospitals that have been able to introduce new service lines, which translate into new jobs, it's really been a critical part of their economy then the ACA has bolstered. So I guess my question for you is, how will you plan to really study and be informed by the data in what's going to happen to Colorado with the proposed plan? Thank you.
Well, Marion, thank you very much for that. And I'll look for the information. I think you said there was 890,000 jobs created as a result of the Affordable Care Act.
180,000. Sorry if I misspoke.
Oh, yeah, no, I may have you may not have, I just may have misunderstood what you said. I haven't seen the 180,000 jobs created in Colorado as a result of the Affordable Care Act. If I have, it was in a context I didn't realize the study was written that way. But we'll certainly look for that information. What I do know is the 20.4% is real data. The 500,000 people who had plans canceled, that's real data from the Division of Insurance in Colorado. We do know that the rates increased the previous year. We do know that the Western Slope of Colorado has some of the highest rate increases in the country as a result of the Affordable Care Act. In fact, I believe several years ago, one Democrat member of Congress from Colorado even tried to opt out several areas of the Western Slope because of Affordable Care Act concerns and price increases. So It's important, though, what you say is exactly right. We have to make sure we study this through analysis that Congress does, analysis of nonpartisan think tanks and the industries that are going to be putting out analysis. Those are important things to read. I'm working my way through the language as we speak, asking questions of experts, talking to people back home, hospitals, providers, insurance, people who are experts in insurance, trying to get a handle on exactly what this impact will be and how it will be an improvement, and it needs to be an improvement from the previous system. I will tell you, too, though, on the rural side, that if the status quo holds, that we've seen numbers that show hundreds of rural hospitals will close under the current system. That's why I proposed legislation called the REACH Act, which would create a series of rural emergency hospitals, allowing these hospitals to remain open and do what we can to strengthen our rural healthcare networks. 50%, I believe the statistic is 50% more likely in rural areas to have an occupational injury than you are in an urban area, and it's important that we have care open during that critical golden hour of an emergency. And so thank you for your service as a pediatrician. I look forward to your expertise and certainly your comments on this as we get through all of the details. Would look forward to hearing from you. Thanks very much, Marion, for your question, and we'll go to the next question.
As a reminder, we also take questions through our website. So the next question comes from Mark. The question is, you recently co-founded the Senate Cybersecurity Caucus. I'm a software professional from Denver, knowledgeable in information security. Will the caucus investigate the lax practices followed by high-level White House staff?
The question was, will the White House will the Cyber Caucus follow the investigation of what? I'm sorry, Megan?
So will the Cyber Caucus investigate the lax practices of high-level White House staff?
I'm assuming the question meant the latest instances, perhaps. But yes, I would intend the Cyber Caucus to investigate any practices that would merit that through our cyber systems, and making sure that this committee has expertise of every committee, the ranking member and the chairman, that has current jurisdiction over cyber issues. So whether it's the White House cybersecurity concerns of this administration, last administration, this is a committee that would be tailor-made for cyber policy and to have the whole of government view of our cyber policy. That's what the committee would be intended to do. This is an incredibly important and emerging field, and we don't have all the information that we need right now when it comes to cybersecurity. We don't have answers of what it means if somebody overseas carries out a strike on the United States via cyber warfare, if that's going to be considered a kinetic strike, if that's going to require a kinetic response. We saw in open source reports recently about activities that may have or allegedly taken place against North Korean missile programs by the United States. This is something that committee should be very much involved with to make sure that we do have not just a stovepiping of cyber policy, meaning defense does defense cyber and Homeland Security does Homeland Security, but we have those experts from across the fields on one committee so that we can share that information in cybersecurity, just as you do in your place of business in the cyber field. And it's great. We have 9,000, I think over 9,000 cybersecurity jobs open in Colorado. These are jobs that are incredibly well paying, and we need to make sure that we have programs in place, education systems in place to train this cyber workforce that we have. We're proud to host the National Cybersecurity Center in Colorado Springs, which is doing a great job of putting programs in place to train people who can fill those 9,000 jobs. But in the state of Virginia, I just met with the governor of Virginia, who said they have over 30,000 job openings in cyber. So this is an important field. It's an emerging field. Great job, great pay, great benefits, but it's of great importance to the United States. So thanks, Megan, and we'll go to the next question.
Next question comes from Lisa in Durango.
Hello?
Hello, Lisa.
Hello. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. I was part of the first town hall and didn't get a chance to ask questions, so I'm very excited, actually. My question is about Planned Parenthood. 3% of Planned Parenthood procedures are abortions. 97% are cancer screenings, birth control, and sexual reproductive health. Rural areas, Planned Parenthood is detrimental to men and women. Republicans, what it seems like to me, have almost started a war against the woman's right to choose. You don't have to personally agree with abortion, but having a woman's right being discussed in politics seems very unfair. We're not trying, and this is dealing with the politics, politicians are willing to discuss men's sexual reproductive health, just women. With the new health care bill that had come out, it did state that, unless Planned Parenthood decided to stop giving abortion, they would pull federal funding. And so my question is, would you protect a woman's right to choose regardless of the health care bills that may come down the future and any bills, period, that seems to attack the woman's right to choose? Will you stand up for us and our right to control what happens to our bodies? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lisa, for the question. And I'm pro-life, and I think one of the most important things that I can focus on in the United States Senate for the people of Colorado is making sure that we're growing an economy, making sure that we're focusing on all of the above energy policy. Those are the things that I focus on and have not focused on social issues. One of the things that I think the bill does, there are more community health centers, federally qualified health centers in Colorado than there are Planned Parenthood facilities. I believe Planned Parenthood has said that they would remain open with or without federal funding. But the proposed House bill simply says that funding would go to the federally qualified health centers, which there are more of across Colorado, that can provide comprehensive medical, dental, mental health care to primary care services to men and women across Colorado. So I think that's what the House provision does. But thank you, Lisa. I don't know that we've had a question from the Durango area yet, so you're the first one. I also would like to mention that this past week we had great news for the Durango area. We have taken the first steps in allowing the Four Corners area to actually have access to Colorado television and continue to work on good SAM issues throughout the region as we focus on getting the Affordable Care Act right for southwestern Colorado. Getting the replacement for the Affordable Care Act right throughout southwestern Colorado and the entire state. Thanks, Lisa, for the question, and we'll go to the next question.
The next question comes from Nick.
Hi, how you doing, sir? My name is Nick, and it's a pleasure to be able to finally talk to you. I've prior combat veteran, United States Marine Corps. From 2005 to 2009, served in Iraq from 2006 to 2007, from 2007 to 2008, and then Afghanistan from 2008 and 2009. When I got out, it felt like the military and my lifestyle of what I did with military felt as if it was a divorce. I remember coming back, being called a baby killer, murderer, spit on. I remember the protest of people of certain religious groups going to our veterans' graves, my brothers in arms. And that wasn't a good time, as our first deployment was 30 minutes outside the wire. Someone was shot, killed, or the worst memories I have were just picking them up in body, put them in rice bags, because it was combat, it was war. Do those memories haunt with me? Yes. But have I gotten over them? Yes. It's just a life experience. But when I come back out and I ask for help, and I go to the Veterans Affairs back in 2009, you had months. 3 months was you were lucky to get an appointment. Usually 6 months to a year was your average appointment just for anything. Today, it really just follows the same suit. So when I got back, the stigma was PTSD as the social norm, it seemed like. But later to find out 6 years later of battling with the VA and going outside private health care, paying out of my pocket, having to travel to Thailand to actually get time frame wise through international care, kind of put just a stain with me But I found out here's TBI, here's other stuff, and I'm in Pueblo, and I live 105 or 110 miles from the Denver VA clinic, and I've been in the ER the past 3 times this past year. I've had to drop out of my final semester of graduation. I put in my notice with the VA to help me out with just the showing how the mitigating circumstances with the VA. That process started in October, and I got a letter about 3 days ago saying you're okay on this. But that was talking through senators, Bob McGruber, and this is just kind of hard on us because it feels like the advocacy isn't really there, and the MPOs offering for TBI saying, hey, we'll just let you go out fish, or we can give you a car once a year, doesn't help a TBI patient with memory problems or anything like that. And so my questions are for you, sir, just as the battle that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis and being in a rural area, having to travel 100 plus some miles to get an appointment because a choice follows the same thing. It's months. It's really just not fast. It's 6 months almost. My question is, what's the actual time frame we're looking at of the VA situating the private care and choice care in those measures, as well as Pueblo VA Clinic no longer does a walk-in process. I found out 2 weeks ago when I started developing seizures. So that's my final question, sir.
Nick, first of all, thank you for your service. God bless you for standing up for this country and what you have done in service and dedication and sacrifice to this nation. What you've described is unacceptable treatment of veteran and unbecoming of the promises that we have made to veterans. I'm going to call you personally as soon as this call is done and get to the bottom of this and make sure that you receive the treatment and the visit that you were promised by the VA and the people of this country. So we're going to give you a call. I will call you personally when this teletown hall is completed. We have made, I hope, positive strides in making sure that the VA lives up to its 30-day obligation of seeing patients. I've requested an Inspector General report of the Colorado Springs VA facility to make sure that they aren't creating or having illegal wait lists that led to extremely bad consequences. And so we're seeking that information. I know there's a Pueblo outpatient clinic in Pueblo, VA, and I also want to make sure that we have a choice system, Veterans Choice Act, that works. This was a system designed that if somebody either lived too far away or wasn't able to get the service they were promised in time, that they could go to a private provider. We know that the VA had significant problems in setting it up. They were delaying payment to the private providers, and then the private providers weren't seeing people as a result because they weren't getting paid from the VA. But we have to continue to make improvements upon that, and I believe we have to continue to track down exactly what's happened in your case. So, again, please don't ever hesitate to contact my office. I have an office in Pueblo, Colorado. We have offices in Colorado Springs, Denver, Fort Collins, Greeley, Yuma, Durango, Grand Junction. But I'm going to call you at the end of this teletown hall and talk to you personally about this and make sure that we provide you the assistance promised to you by this government and the people of this country. I know we've had a lot of people on this call, a great conversation tonight from across the state of Colorado. Thanks for participating in this evening's teletown hall. We are going to do these continuing throughout the year, opportunity when we're in session to visit with people from Washington in Colorado, because as I've said before, we got to have more Colorado and Washington and less Washington in Colorado to get things done for the people of our great state and our great country. We're going to hold these teletown halls throughout the different times of the day, reaching different people, whether it's in the middle of the day to reach out to people who may work in the evening. We'll reach out in the evening to catch people who may be coming home from work. So thanks to all of you for being a part of it. It's an honor to represent and serve the people of Colorado. Really sorry if I wasn't able to get to everyone's questions, but if we can be of any assistance, please don't hesitate to contact one of those offices in the locations I just described. Check out our website at gardner.senate.gov. You can sign up for our newsletter, follow us on social media. But thank you again for participating in today's call, and God bless. Thank you.
The teleforum has ended. Thank you for calling. Goodbye.
Don't even try. That's what I'm saying. It's weird that they don't even try. Wait, hold up. Wait, I'll be right back.